Have you ever left a 1-star review? I always see funny 1-star reviews on Instagram, so I thought, why don't I pick a few and put them to the test? About a couple years ago, I stopped reading books because it just wasn't for me. So the way I'll be structuring this video is just telling you if the book is trash or if I would actually recommend it. I did find books that have a 1-star overall rating, but I'll leave that to my friend Rachel over at Rage with Rachel. She does a way better critique than I ever could. I'll have her linked in my description if you want to go and check her out. But I just picked a bunch of funny 1-star reviews, or just 1-star reviews in general, and am going to be reading the books that the reviews are for. So let's get reading. Hello, Editing Alex here. Just to give some disclaimers before the video officially gets started. First and foremost, reviews are for readers. This is just a fun video. Everybody is entitled to their own opinions, and everybody's reviews are valid unless they are ableist, homophobic, racist, any of those things. I don't stand for that. This video is all in good fun, and I really hope you enjoy it. First up is a book that I own by an author I love, Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. I didn't know that this book was that controversial, but the Goodreads reviews say different. One user says, quite possibly the worst book I've ever read. Was ready to toss it in at 15%, but persisted due to all the hype surrounding it. There was one paragraph I liked, but overall, this can only be described as a steaming pile of dog shit. I ended up returning it at 60% because it literally gave me restless leg syndrome, and there were 6 people on the waiting list, so decided to chuck it in. I have no idea how this was one of 5 votes short of being the Goodreads Best Fiction winner, DNF at 60%. So, we'll have to see if it is a steaming pile of dog shit. Another user says, this book was the worst. Every other chapter repeats, and the off chapters involve annoying and frustrating characters who do nothing to push the plot along. It's as though they're annoying for nothing. So we might have some unlikable characters. I don't know if this book is actually about anxiety, so it's going to be really interesting if so, because as somebody with social and generalized anxiety, I tend to see when anxiety is portrayed in a book, people can be really shitty about it. There was a book in particular, Kiss Her Once for Me, that has great anxiety rep, and I saw people say how annoying that character was. And as somebody with anxiety, that just gives me more anxiety. So it's really gonna be interesting if that is really what these reviews are about. It'll be horrible and honestly probably not surprising, but that is just how it goes, and it sucks. It really does. People need to have more critical thinking skills, because I think a lot of people go into books like just thinking that they're gonna like the main character, and that's not always the case. You don't have to like every character. There's usually an intention behind that. The author is usually writing an unlikable character to prolong the plot. However, this says these characters do nothing to push the plot along, so we'll see if that's true. This book should have been called Annoying People. Unrealistic, so repetitive. The police interviews were simply ridiculous. Borderline stupidity is what's considered humorous in this novel. Yikes. The only thing this review does is further back up my claims that people think anxious people are annoying. We're not. We literally just have anxiety. Look up what anxiety is and get educated on it. We're not annoying. Our brains are annoying. And last, this book is about idiots. Author's words, not mine. It rambles on and on and on and on, then rambles some more. I finished it just to say I finished, not a fan. So some things I need to look out for while I read Anxious People are annoying and frustrating characters, police interviews that are boring, and repetitiveness and rambling. The thing is too, this is like a literary fiction, I believe. Like, he writes general fiction, so I feel like maybe people that have never read Fredrik Backman before just don't really know his style. This is my first time reading him outside of Beartown, so this will be really interesting. And one thing for myself is I want to actually know if it's about anxiety or not. He's one of my favorite writers and authors, and I do love the way that he writes mental health, so it'll be interesting to know if this is actually about anxiety or not. Because if so, then I have a whole discussion to talk about how people treat anxious characters and anxious people in general, because if you think I'm annoying, that is just giving my anxiety more power. But let's read what it's about. A poignant charming novel about a crime that never took place. A would-be bank robber who disappears into thin air, and 8 extremely anxious strangers who find they have more in common than they ever imagined. Yeah, this is definitely about anxiety. And it's really going to be interesting to read it because I, too, am an anxious person. But also, I feel like that is a situation where you would have extreme anxiety because somebody is being defamed for a crime that they didn't actually do. So, this one will be interesting. I also have to give credit to the inspiration behind this video. It is from Ryan Trahan here on YouTube. Last year, I binged his Penny series and have been watching his content ever since. I really enjoy his YouTube videos, and I believe I found him through his 1-star review videos. So I was like, how could I turn this bookish? Let's do some 1-star rated books. If you want to check him out, I'll link him down below. He's like pretty popular. He has millions of followers. We're definitely not in the same bracket. I'm currently on sprints. I started the audiobook for anxious people and it is going really fast. This has 74 chapters and I'm already on chapter 12. The chapters are super short, but I'm really enjoying it. It's exactly how it's pitched. It is about a bank robber and all of the people around the town trying to figure out what happened and who this person is. I'm enjoying it so far. I just love Frederick Bachman's writing. I think he is such a great storyteller and he's funny. This is really interesting because it has dark themes, but it also is hilarious. I think that's one thing people don't know about Frederick Bachman is he's hilarious. I think he's so funny. Sometimes I watch panels of his and I also follow him on Instagram, so I know his humor quite well, parasocially I guess, but I just think he's hilarious. I love his writing and his characters. This is so interesting because it is a mystery, but we're seeing the perspective from everybody involved. We're having different perspectives. There is the policeman who is on the case, we have a realtor, and I just think this is going to be so interesting. It's reminding me of that one Hulu show. I can't remember what it's called. I literally have never watched an episode of it, but just knowing what it's about, I feel like that's exactly the vibes of this. I don't want to say it's satirical because I don't think it is, but it's just like a lighthearted mystery, I guess. But I don't even know if I can call it that because it just talked about suicide. It talks a lot about mental health, which I had predicted before even getting into this book, and I flipped to the end just to see how many pages and how many chapters we have, and it does have resources for suicide awareness. The first chapter alone says, this story is about a lot of things, but mostly idiots, which we kind of got from one of the reviews. So it needs saying from the outset that it's always very easy to declare that other people are idiots, but only if you forget how idiotically difficult being human is. Some of the reviews did not remember that, especially if you have other people you're trying to be a reasonably good human being for, because there's such an unbelievable amount that we're all supposed to be able to cope with these days. You're supposed to have a job and somewhere to live and a family, and you're supposed to pay taxes and have clean underwear and remember the password to your damn Wi-Fi. Some of us never manage to get the chaos under control, so our lives simply carry on. The world spinning through space at 2 million miles an hour while we bounce about on its surface like so many lost socks. We're not in control, so we learn to pretend all the time about our jobs, about our marriages and our children and everything else. We pretend we're normal, that we're reasonably well educated, that we understand amortization levels and inflation rates. We pretend to be good parents when all we do is provide for our kids with food and clothing and tell them off when they put chewing gum they find on the ground in their mouths. Sometimes it hurts, it really hurts. We don't have a plan, we just do our best to get through the day because there'll be another one coming along tomorrow. Sometimes it hurts, it really hurts, for no reason than the fact that our skin doesn't feel like it's ours. Sometimes we panic because the bills need paying and we have to be a grown-up and we don't know how, but it's so horribly, desperately easy to fail at being grown-up. Because everyone loves someone, and anyone who loves someone has had those desperate nights where we lie awake trying to figure out how we can afford to carry on being human beings. Sometimes that makes us do things that seem ridiculous in hindsight, which felt like the only way out at the time. One single really bad idea, that's all it takes. And that is why Frederick Bachman is the GOAT. But How fucking relatable is that? Like he said, it is about idiots doing idiotic things, but it really is about being human and making mistakes. But I will have to read more and see how it wraps up to form my final conclusion. But honestly, I just feel like this is gonna be so relatable. Not in the sense that I'm a bank robber. Like, I don't know if anybody could relate to a bank robber, but there was also just a scene about suicide and having suicidal thoughts. So I really think this is gonna dive into mental health. I loved that first page. It is so realistic, and I just love Frederick Bachman, so I am really glad that I chose to start this book today. About 40% in and I'm enjoying it. There's a lot of characters and it is really about mental health. It talks about a bridge and certain characters who have either jumped or wanted to jump. They were about to jump. So it does really just talk about suicide, not feeling worthy enough, and just being human. I think it's such a great story. I love the way it's told. Some of it is told in transcripts following the police officers who are trying to figure out what happened. Basically, there was a hostage situation at an apartment viewing and it was a bank robber who is our culprit. However, he is not a bank robber. It was a failed bank robbery. And you find out his true intentions. I'm not gonna spoil it for you here, but it is just about being human and making mistakes that you think are good for your family or good for yourself. And in the long run, you find out that it's not. And I think that is so fucking relatable. So I think everybody giving this a 1 star is just a hater, but I'm only 40% in, so we'll find out what my true thoughts are. I will say I am very biased because I love Frederick Bachman, and I will say literary fiction is hard to read sometimes, and I think somebody that just wants a cookie cutter book where you have a beginning, middle, end, and a happy ending, you're not gonna get that in a Frederick Bachman book, okay? His books are fucking sad and dark and make you think about life. Anybody going into this book or any of his work thinking that it's going to be a happy ending, you are very, very wrong. You definitely need to know what you're getting into when you're reading Frederick Bachman. And he's Swedish. This book is translated from Swedish to English, and it's translated by Neil Smith. So I think that could be another thing where people may not understand some of his humor and his writing. So as I'm 40% in, my predictions still stand. Like, I can understand not wanting to read about suicide because this does talk a lot about that and people jumping off a bridge and ending their lives. So I can understand why somebody might not like to read that, because it can be intense at times since you are in the head of these people. That is something I love about Frederick Bachman, is he is able to connect all of the characters in his story to the main plot of the story. I love that so much. If this is your first time picking him up, you're probably going to be confused. I would think Beartown is a better introduction, but his books are dark and they're witty, and if people just want a linear novel, like I said, that has a happy ending, they're not gonna get that here. So it could also just be a thing where people are coming into this with the wrong expectations. I just finished Anxious People and I enjoyed it, but I can understand why people wouldn't like it because the plot is all over the place, as one of the reviews had mentioned, so I definitely saw that in this book. There are a bunch of different characters that you're following. I did turn on the audiobook and that helped me follow the story so much better because the narrator did different voices for each character. But this book is ultimately about just being human and the anxiety of living and being human. I've mentioned this before, but it talks a lot about suicide, so if that is something that is going to be sensitive for you, please avoid this book at all costs because it talks about it a lot. There are many characters who are suicidal or may have taken their own lives. It talks about a bridge and people jumping off a bridge. He does write in third person, and I know that's not for everybody. If you don't like character-driven books and you need a book that has a main plot, this is not going to be the book for you. Sometimes with literary fiction, you are the judge and you decide what the message was. To me, the message was just being human, and like he said on the first page, it's idiots doing idiotic things because we're all human. The whole reason the bank robber is doing this is because they are trying to better themselves and got stuck in a shitty situation. There are a lot of trigger warnings for this book. Like I said, suicide, mental health. It also talks about cheating. There are affairs. There's a lot of drama in this book, so if you like the drama and you like character-driven books, I think you'll enjoy this. There's also a sapphic couple. Ultimately, this is about a hostage situation during an apartment viewing where a bank robber holds people hostage at an apartment viewing. It is the perspective from everybody there. It does go back and forth. So for instance, there is a woman, Zara, who ends up going to therapy, and so we see her and then we learn about her and how she connects to other things in the story, and then she's at the apartment viewing. And I will say, you don't know who the bank robber is until the end, but it's also kind of up to your interpretation, and that is what literary fiction is. It's ambiguous and sometimes up to your interpretation, and I know people hate that. I sometimes hate ambiguity because I just want to know what actually happened, so I can understand. This is a slow book, and if you don't like character-driven books and a lot of characters, this definitely isn't going to be the book for you, but it was the book for me because I love Frederick Bachman. I will say, I don't think it's my favorite of his, but I like what it did. Beartown will always be my favorite, but I am glad that I read this because I own it, and I didn't hate it. I thought it was really interesting because you are getting a perspective from everybody here, and everybody has a different story and shit that they have done throughout their lives. To answer another question of mine before I started reading this, is it about anxiety? Yes, but it's about being anxious as an adult and the anxieties of life and being an adult. For instance, there is a sapphic couple who are about to have their first child, and that is why they're at this apartment viewing, and the one character is terrified and she doesn't know if she wants to have kids. There's a scene in the book where she's talking about this, saying she doesn't even know what to do with a kid or even if she likes them, and mentions a situation where I believe she was babysitting a cousin or a friend's kid, and there was an emergency that happened and she didn't even know what to do. So honestly, I think this is super relatable. There's a scene where the psychiatrist is talking about panic attacks, and she says, "I've learned that it helps to talk about it." Unfortunately, I think most people would still get sympathy from their colleagues and bosses at work if they showed up looking rough one morning and say, "I'm hungover," than if they say, "I'm suffering from anxiety." But I think we pass people on the street every day who feel the same as you and I. Many of them just don't know what it is. Men and women go around for months having trouble breathing and seeing doctor after doctor because they think there's something wrong with their lungs. All because it's so damn difficult to admit that something else is broken. That it's an ache in our soul, invisible lead weights in our blood, and indescribable pressure in our chest. Our brains are lying to us, telling us we're going to die. But there's nothing wrong with our lungs. We're not going to die, you and I. I actually love it. As I was listening to that, I was like, but we're gonna die someday, because that's how my anxiety works. But also, it's true. The character, she says, "Yet." Which, fair play. So I loved that passage, and I just love the way it talked about anxiety. Like I already shared with you, I have anxiety. I was diagnosed with general and social anxiety, and this was so relatable. I feel like we don't talk about anxiety as adults. Like, anxiety just doesn't go away. It's not just a thing that goes away. There are anxiety disorders, like I have, but having just general anxiety is a thing. This does talk about anxiety as a mental health condition, but it also talks about about just the anxieties of life. Like I said, there are so many characters who feel like they aren't doing enough, and they have done things in their lives that they regret or they just thought was a good idea at that time and it's not. So this is just about being human and anxiety. So if you like any of that, I recommend it, but I do understand why people wouldn't like this because it is all over the place at times. However, I was able to follow it because of the audiobook, so if you want to read it, the audiobook is a great way to start. So if you want to read it, I recommend the audiobook, and I will leave my Librofm link down below. If you haven't heard of Librofm, I'm an affiliate and they are a alternative to Audible. They're great. I'll actually have a graphic up on the screen which shows you the differences, and I'll try and link it down below as well for you to know the differences between Librofm and Audible, because Librofm does so many great things and you're able to support your local indie bookstore as well as download the audiobooks that you have. So once you get credits for audiobooks or you buy one during their sales, which is what I do, you can download it and you keep it. Just like if you went to the store and you bought a book and then now it's yours and you own it, that is how Librofm runs with their audiobooks. I love them. I actually recently subscribed during the Amazing Readathon and I think I'm gonna be a subscriber now. I said in my last video that I mentioned them. I wasn't sure if it was for me, but after I read everything to you, I was like, you know what? I think I'll do this. I do use their sales a lot, so I have a lot of audiobooks from them because they do sales. But now that I'm a member, I get some other benefits. So I'll link them down below if you're looking to get some more audiobooks. And if you're just interested in audiobooks, I recently did a video where I share some of my favorite queer audiobooks. So I'll have that video linked up above for you. Now on to the next book. Just save yourself and don't read it. It's not worth it. I am not talking about this. Nope. I didn't have anything better to do, so I gave this a read. I need to sprinkle some holy water on myself. I actually do have some holy water in my house, so we'll see if I need to bring it out. I have seen everything. Yeah, this was definitely a book. There were definitely words on the page. Coronavirus might be working fast, but MJ Edwards is working faster. I never thought the day would come. This is never a book that I would actually read, but when I decided I wanted to do this video, I couldn't not read this book. I know a lot of people have read this. My friend Rachel has done a review, so I'll link hers down below. A creator I really like, Swell Entertainment, she has done a review, so I'll link those down below. I specifically bought wine for this purpose, so I'm gonna pour some wine and I'm going to read Kissing the Coronavirus. Like and subscribe. I've been putting this off for way too long. I was going to do it on Friday. It is now Monday, so let's get it done. I picked up some wine for the occasion, so in the video portion, I will be reading and drinking that wine. However, if you're sensitive to that, I have a separate video for you where you still get to see my reaction, but I'll be drinking root beer instead. So if you need that, it'll be linked down below. And for everybody else, let's get reading. Cheers. She was supposed to cure the coronavirus. Instead, she fell in love with it. Her nipple hardened like a Tic Tac? That is certainly a choice of words to use. Bro, I can't get over that part. Listen, what page am I on? I'm only on page 2, and I'm already, oh my god, okay. Good thing I have this, oh my god. See, that's why I need to be a good choice. Also, for anybody curious, this is Pink Moscato, one of my favorites. I definitely drink less than 10 alcoholic beverages in a year. I am very much an occasional drinker, so I'm not someone who drinks very often, but I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna be reading a silly book, drinking wine pairs very nicely to that. I'm just gonna read to this part I just read. A shock of electricity coursed through her veins, eventually stopping as it reached her. I don't even know if I can say it on YouTube, so I might have to bleep it. It was like she'd sat on a battery. Everything tingled and it felt good. Bro, when has it ever felt like that when you sat on a battery? Okay, fine. Alright. What the fuck? Dude, this is such weird writing. And I know that's what a lot of people said, is that the writing is so bad, but like, why did it just say her P word so wet that the lace glided across her skin like a fat man on a water slide? For what purpose? Like, this is what I'm saying. Her similes fucking make no sense. They're weird. It's so weird. Okay, well, at least this one kind of made sense. An intense burst from within, like an entire firework display going off at once. That at least made sense. This is only 16 pages, and I was like, you know what? I can just quickly read it and then go and watch some baseball. But I have a feeling I'm gonna be here longer than I expected. According to my camera, it's only been 15 minutes. However, I am filming 2 separate parts, and I'm only on page 3. At least we got like 13 pages to go, so. Obviously this isn't edited, but she isn't even putting a period on doctor. There's no period. It's so weird. The punctuation. I believe this author might also be British, because there's some things I'm just not getting. I can say that I don't think I've ever read a book where the word thick is spelled Thicc. I may have read it as like dialogue, somebody saying that, but never actually in text describing someone's ass before. Well, didn't have that on my bingo card. Oh, whoa, okay. Not the transphobia with the micropenises joke. It's transphobic to say that it's literally not funny. The small dick jokes are so transphobic. I'm over it. Oh my god. I'm sorry, but I'm still not over the my nipple got so hard like a tic tac. I'm just trying to imagine that sentence, and I know I shouldn't, but I think literally, and I know I shouldn't for this, but I'm neurodivergent, this is what happens, and wow. Page 6 now, 10 more pages, and the coronavirus person, guy, hasn't even appeared yet, so. The writing, like, I knew it was bad, and I was like, I can probably just move past it, but why does this say, I don't know who that is? That's the dialogue. Came a bellowing bellow, which rattled the beakers and tinkled the tubes around the lab. Bellowing bellow? Says I have 14 minutes left of the book, so we're almost finished. My camera says I've been recording for almost 30 minutes. You can definitely skip forward if you don't want to hear me talk about the description of this man's penis. Can I even call it a man? I guess so. It says, his strong brow, piercing blue eyes, supple lips, a wide jaw like the trunk of a car. Okay? Bulky, thick shoulders, a flat stomach, a bulge in his trousers the size of a medium-length python. I'm on page 11, 5 more pages to go. And I need to just talk for a second, because I'm confused why they don't know anything about COVID. I think it's that it's like the beginning of the virus happening, so the scientists are doing trials and things, trying to figure out how serious the virus is. She was just told she's asymptomatic, and possibly killed her co-worker because of that. And she's just like, oh, really? But like, wouldn't you know that if you were a scientist and you're working on COVID? Wouldn't you know that? Wouldn't you guys be taking tests all the time? Unless it's before we even had any tests. But then how would you know that your other co-workers had COVID and died? The math isn't mathing. I'm so confused. She looked up at him. His eyes were striking like a goat's. What the fuck? What the... This is what I was saying. The similes are not making sense. I wouldn't say a goat has striking eyes. I don't think I've ever even looked at a goat's eyes and thought that. His tongue so soft and hot, like a chunk of microwaved fish, sloshing around inside her mouth. You don't have to describe everything. We know what the tongue feels like. I feel like you could have just said his tongue so soft and hot and left it at that. We don't need to know that it's like a chunk of microwaved fish. That is a weird description that I didn't need to know. For all the times that I write and I think I'm a bad writer, I'm just going to compare myself to this book. You can't be any worse than this. Finished. Over. Honestly, I didn't like it, but I would want to read more because I just don't know what the purpose is. I am definitely going to watch my friend Rachel's video where she read the whole series, so I'll link it down below. I think I've already mentioned that in this video, but I'll just reference it again. Wow. I have thoughts. I can definitely agree with the reviews, but I just am thinking more about how COVID is a pandemic. A lot of people lost loved ones and still are because COVID is still a thing. Wear your masks. And I just don't understand. I'm trying to I just have so many thoughts. I know that the purpose she wrote this was just like a silly thing and it went viral. But I'm hoping she at least did something with that virality where she donated to COVID causes and maybe some hospitals or families that were affected, something, because I can understand just writing like a silly, goofy book, but there are so many people that were affected by it. A lot of people like to glamorize or just talk about like, oh, I wish we could go back to COVID times, but not realize even if you weren't affected by it, and I know people were affected by quarantine and lockdown for many of reasons, mental health especially, domestic abuse went up, and I know there's so many factors besides even people losing loved ones, and I just can't understand making light of that situation in this context, because I would like to read a book where there's scientists that are working on COVID and maybe something happens, but the fact that this girl is so attracted to COVID, I will also say the guy that turns into COVID, his name is just COVID, and I'm like, you could have just been more creative or something, maybe called him Corona. I know this probably took her like an hour to write, so I'm not going to really knock that. Now, I wasn't going into this hoping for something good. I knew the problems with it because I've seen so many videos and critiques about it, and I just keep coming back to why? Like, why was this a thing? Why glamorize COVID? I don't understand. Anyway, wear your masks. Let me know if you've read this. Here's what my wine's looking like. I didn't drink too much of it, but I drank enough. Now to the final book. Was gonna give it 2 stars, but the ending threatened the possibility of a series, and that was the final straw. I wanted to give up after the first chapter, but I pushed myself, wanting to give it a fair shot. I'm 44% in, and I just can't. I'm more bored than the werewolf. The writing is incredibly stiff. It feels like reading a report, honestly. Not for me. Star emoji. DNF at page 72. The werewolf was bored. I was bored. Everybody was bored. Nothing happens in this, and none of the characters are likable, and the main character is as bland as the color beige. This is Bored Gay Werewolf by Tony Standorella. It came out in 2023. It has a 3.56 rating on Goodreads, so it's not horrible, but those were the 1-star reviews that made me a little hesitant to read this book, but I'm interested to see if it is as boring. Before I get into this, I want to let you know I am going to have a bias here because I am not a big fan of werewolf books. I don't care much about reading occults at all. I am not a fantasy reader at all. all. So I want to let you know that before I get into this book, because I might hate it just because it has werewolves. However, I just wanted to read it because the 1-star reviews are funny, and I've never heard this book before. The fact that it's queer is really intriguing to me, and I don't mind werewolves, but it's not a buzzword that's going to attract me to a book. But let's read what it's about. Brian, an aimless slacker, works doubles at his shift job, forgets to clean his room, and lays about with his friends Nick and Darby. He's been struggling to manage his transition to adulthood almost as much as his monthly transitions to a werewolf. Really, he is not great at the whole werewolf thing, and his recent murderous slip-ups have caught the attention of Tyler, a millennial were-mentor determined to take the mythological world by storm. Tyler has got a plan, and his weirdly self-help punditry actually encourages Brian to shape up and to stop accidentally marking out guys who ghosted him on Grindr as potential monthly victims. But as Brian gets closer to Tyler's pack and alienated from Nick and Darby, he realizes that Tyler's expansion plans are much more nefarious than a little dubious engagement. This is probably going to be satire and silly. I feel like we are getting a trend with the novels here. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not reading books that are solely 1-star, with the exception of Kissing the Coronavirus, but I just feel like we're gonna have a pattern here again where people either didn't read the description, which is fine. Sometimes I get into books where I just don't read what it's about, and also people just don't understand satire, which is also fair because satire can be hard to understand sometimes, but the fact that you rate a book low because of that is very interesting. I feel like I can have a lot of conversations in this video about 1-star ratings and how ratings do help authors and how they also harm authors, especially Black authors and authors of color. There has been a repeated pattern of this. There's a lot of racism that goes on with star ratings, though I do still carry the mindset where if somebody rated a book 5 stars, I'm more inclined to read it versus a 2 or 3 star. But 3-star ratings don't sway me because they're just neutral. I'm totally fine with those. So the fact that this is a 3.5 or something is really promising to me. So I'll be really interested to see how this goes. I have the audiobook, so I'm gonna hit play in the morning and I will see you when I have something to update on. It's been a while. I just finished up Gay Werewolf, so let's talk about it. This is a satirical book, so not everybody is going to get it or enjoy it. And that is valid because everybody's review and thoughts about books are valid unless you're homophobic, transphobic, or racist. So knowing what the reviews were, I understand them, but I also know that people don't get satire. A lot of the reviews say how Brian was boring and the book was boring, and honestly, it didn't get fun until 50% in, and I have been going through burnout, and this book has not been motivating me at all to pick it up. I had the audiobook of Gay Werewolf, and the only reason I finished it was because I told myself to play House Flipper, and that's how I got finished. I'm glad I gave it a second chance, unlike some people who reviewed it. According to the reviews, some people stopped at 44%, or they were like me and decided to give it a second chance. I'm glad that I did because it does talk about important issues in the gay community. It talks about fetishization, Grindr, and toxic masculinity. I can understand the title of Gay Werewolf because Brian is pretty bored. He's working as a waiter and he is just living a minute life until a guy named Tyler comes into his life and shit goes down. I just could not stop thinking about Teen Wolf, and I haven't even watched the whole entire show. I just know snippets, and for some reason I just couldn't stop thinking about Teen Wolf. And also that one part in Julie and the Phantoms where the villain comes in, that's just all I could think of. So maybe that'll sell you on the book. But I'm glad I was introduced to this book. It wasn't my favorite thing by any means. I recently read The Z Word, and I would say this is very similar to it. The Z Word has queer zombies, and it also has some satire and talks about the queer community and rainbow capitalism. And this one is similar in the way that we have satire and we have commentary on the gay community. So if you like werewolves and you like books that have social commentary, I recommend this, but it wasn't my favorite thing. I just don't think I'm the target audience though, because like I've already said, I don't care for werewolves, but if you do, this might be something that you'll like. I don't think it was horrible, but I did listen to the audiobook, so it's not like I was reading the text version like some people, because there's reviews that say the writing is pretty stiff. I just think it's super slow in the beginning, and if we had a little bit more build up and action, I would like it. That's why the Z word works, because it has a zombie apocalypse element, which I love. But this was fine. I understand why people don't like it, and that's totally fine. And that is it for this reading vlog. I'm so glad I finally got this idea out and completed. If you had as much fun as I did, the best way to help support this video and my channel is to like, comment, and subscribe. If you're new here, hi, I'm Alex. This is Pucks and Paperbacks, where I love to talk about queer and trans books, as well as make fun videos like these. I have a ton of themed reading vlogs if you're looking for more things like this. I would love to have you over here, so definitely hit subscribe if you're interested. As always, my description has important resources for you to check out, and that is it. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did. I would love to know all of your thoughts in the comments, and I hope to see you in my next video very soon. Bye.